art inspires, right? Wow, I think that's part of what moves us, is looking at something that transports you out of yourself. This morning we've been talking about how you get inspiration as an individual, but then we also heard that you should actually listen to society, listen to your users first. This is the dynamic that we've been talking about, and here, this is where we are right now. This is a visualization of why this is a time of creative destruction, and why every one of you guys in this room have to do your equivalent of playing the violin with that much passion in whatever you do right now. I think this shows us, I came of age as a journalist during a time when it was linear growth, right? And if we have linear growth, I mean, in media, 4% growth rate is fantastic, 6% is great, but what happens when technology comes in and brings this up and you get that hockey stick? Here's the last part. You think it's only tech companies that are supposed to do that, but now every business is an internet business. So if you can figure out how you can move what you're doing into the internet, you can see that hockey stick growth rate, right? It's a great segue from art to business, but that's actually where I'm bringing you now. Because in the end, the technology is at the service of the people. And the people who are inspired can create new things. This is a time of creative destruction, and that's what that shows. So from handling ABS-CBN, which is, I had about 1,000 journalists, we went from this linear growth curve, and I said, I think we can do this exponential curve without turning completely into a tech company, but we can build it in. So it started with this, strangely enough, tracking terrorists. In July of 2008, I had 3 journalists kidnapped by the Abu Sayyaf. And here's the crazy thing. We got them out in 10 days. I was the crisis manager for that. And I was a war zone correspondent when I was with CNN, and those 10 days when I was a crisis manager was probably the worst 10 days of my life because so much is out of your control. Out of your control. P&G, this is the world today. You have to lose control to get control. So in 2010, after I left ABS, I came to Singapore and I wrote this book. It's called From Bin Laden to Facebook, and it looks at how ideology, the one that makes you kill yourself for a cause, talk about passion, how it ripples through society, and how it went from Osama bin Laden in the physical world to Facebook in the virtual world. And when you look at it that way, it's really scary, but I want to show you how this is the underpinning of everything we do at Rappler. If you take a look here, I won't be able, you can actually see how everyone is connected. Again, right? Let's go to society. So you have to harness all that feeling of art and inspiration. Now let's look at how we can move society. How can you impact society? How can you get people to do what you want them to do, right? Look at the 3 degrees of separation in a physical network. If you can chart your social networks, you can actually harness the power of social networks. And social networks, whether it's physical, which is face-to-face where we are, or social media, which are your physical social networks on steroids. It's got no boundaries of time and space, right? This is a physical network. So if you look, the difference from Osama bin Laden to Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the architect of 9/11. Let's go down here. Umar Patek is an Indonesian who lived in the southern Philippines for 7 years. Actually, let's say he hid out in the southern Philippines. And you see him connect to this guy, Salih Said. Salih Said was 18 years old when he picked up Ses Drilon and 2 of our cameramen from their Jeep and brought them into the jungle. Salih Said, his father, was actually the guy who sheltered Marwan, the most wanted, the high-value target, who was killed earlier this year in January. So you see how we're connected. Now, if you can map that person to person to person link or social media account to social media account link, then you can map the spread of emotions and behavior. This is kind of an easy map of trying to figure out how we can influence. Normally, if you have a social network like this, you would think that if you wanted to spread an idea, you would go to the guy who's most connected, which is number 10, right? That's correct, but if you only do number 10, you actually wind up with something that we call the echo chamber. You wind up talking amongst yourselves, right? In this room, who did you talk the most to? People from your same office or people you didn't know? It's human nature. So there are these, we call them the edges of each one. Now on social media, if you look here, and this is how we grew Rappler, I would hit number 10, I would hit 17, I would hit 2. And it would take the same amount to hit all of them, and they would spread and cascade faster. This is the way I think about social media and society, the individual and society. What you see is just the tip of the iceberg. So whether it's a tweet or a post, it's only the top. That carries an emotion because we're human beings and we actually know that we communicate and inspire or trigger fear through emotions. That travels through networks, whether it's physical or in the virtual world on social media. And when that happens, you can change behavior. You guys, P&G, do a lot of television, right? I mean, television was the most manipulative medium before social media. So let me take you to my world now, right? I looked at this at the way terrorists did it. We reverse constructed it and used it for good. We use it. You can see the way you can use it. This is Rappler today. And again, I'm still a traditional journalist, but a lot of things have changed. In Rappler, we built technology into the DNA. And then here's the last part. Remember I said lose control to get control. The crowd. That's part of who you are now. In fact, the brand of the 21st century is the brand that I walk into a supermarket and I look at all of these things in front of me and I say, I helped create that brand. That's this generation. So the crowd is part of Rappler, as much as I think it will be part of any brand that wants to grow into this new generation. So this part, if you look at this as content creation, we then use what technology gives us. Social media, engagement on social media leads to crowdsourcing. Crowdsourcing is when you ask your crowd to build with you, and when they do any action, it becomes data, which you then gather. I don't much believe in programmatic because I think then I don't have enough control. So I'll talk about that later. Big data. Big data, when you infuse it right back into the mix, is incredible. Let's take them one by one. Social media. I said social media is really just your physical social network, your family and friends on steroids, no boundaries of time and space. And it really hit a tipping point. This is a big game changer, not just for media, but for, I think, every industry. Because frankly, everything is disintermediated now. P&G is building its own community. Of course, I'm going to tell you, you always are going to need Rappler in the mix. But technically, if you're doing it really well, you should be feeding your own community. Tipping point, July 2009. These are stats from July 2009, and I can give you all of this, but this is the one I want you to look at. In July of 2009, social media overtook pornography as the #1 activity on the web. So from the very beginning, when the internet was created up until now, so it was around 1988, until July of 2009, pornography was the #1 activity. Now ask yourself, how did social media overtake pornography as the #1 activity on the web? Because of you, because of this. I won't ask you who watches porn. But we know that this is a Stanford University study that looked at people who were on social media, on Facebook and Twitter. Do you ever notice that when you're on Facebook, the minute you get drawn into it, it's kind of hard to get off? Because when you're on social media, you have elevated levels of dopamine. It's a neurotransmitter that causes mild addiction. Other hormones and chemicals like oxytocin. Oxytocin is called the love hormone, the sex hormone. So if you think about it, the cartoon is a better visualization than the studies, which I can give you the studies. But if you look at it when you're on social media, you feel like you're taking crystal meth, having alcohol, taking a risk, falling in love, and having sex. So why would pornography not be number 2 to number 1, right? So that's changing us. So what we did in Rappler is we used social media to actually reach our audience. We're only 3.5 years old, and yet after a year and a half, we became the 3rd top online news source in the Philippines. This is the first rudimentary crowdsourcing that we did, because I wanted to see, you gotta play. Our team came from huge organizations, and then we said, let's start with nothing and imagine the world the way it is now with the tools that we have. The mood meter, we patented a user engagement model. And in this one, you basically, every story on Rappler has a mood meter. You click how you feel. So we asked the sociologists and the psychologists, what are the 8 emotions that Filipinos feel when they see something? And these are the top 8. When you click how you feel, that's aggregated by the mood navigator, which is in the middle of the front page. That's this up on top. You can navigate through that. And then every single data point, I can map. The month of May 2013 in moods, I pull out because that's when we had midterm elections. We're getting ready for the May 2016 presidential elections. It will have huge implications on the future of the Philippines, societal, right? Future of the Philippines. And we can map what moves through our society. We can see what moves through society. You can see in May 2013, Filipinos were 77% happy. But the interesting thing is, on election day itself, we were largely angry. And you can actually see that we were angry exactly at around 7:30 p.m. when the voting machines, the results were delayed. So Filipinos were very angry when there was a delay in the automated results coming back. This is when the senators, the winners, were announced, right? You can see what moves through society. That's crowdsourcing. Now let's move towards unstructured big data. These are not Rorschach tests, even though it would be interesting to hear what you think they look like. But this is something that we mapped in 2011. And this is actually, you know, I wanted to take a few years off in Singapore and kind of enjoy not having any pressure. But when I saw this, I said, it's time to do Rappler, because this are Twitter maps. This is not a survey. This is behavior of human beings. This is the behavior of the people who buy P&G products in specific moments of time. Hashtag Japan is the earthquake and Fukushima disaster, right? And the Japanese behave the same way Filipinos, Indonesians, Singaporeans behave during crisis. They clump around sources of information. B, hashtag GOP is the US presidential elections, Mitt Romney and Barack Obama. We just pulled down hashtag GOP and you take a look. Is there no better visualization of how conflicted and divided Americans were between Mitt Romney and Barack Obama, right? You don't have to ask them, you can see from their behavior. Hashtag Egypt, for better or for worse. That's what a revolution looks like. And hashtag Syria is 16 months into the conflict that could redefine our world. The question is, there is predictive analytics of data. Could we, if this hashtag Syria begins to look like hashtag Egypt, does that mean a revolution has happened? These are questions that really got to me. I'm bringing it to the Philippines, and this is August of 2013, hashtag Million People March. It took one Facebook post, 7 days, to get between 100,000 to 130,000 people in the main park in the Philippines. And, you know, they were there against corruption. Something that my ex-boss said Filipinos wouldn't care about because we care about bread and butter issues. We care about hunger. We care about food on the table. They care about corruption. And 7 days for one Facebook post to get that out. Enough to change President Aquino's position on the Priority Development Assistance Fund. That's what collective action can do. So again, the whole thing today, we've been talking about the individual and the society. It comes together. Now, if an individual has the courage to stand up, you can actually pull a collective together to change reality. That's really powerful stuff. This is what it looks like when you map it. When we map it on Twitter, It looks like this because it is a typical internet peer-to-peer driven protest. The first one in the Philippines. And you can see that the crowds are really murky. In fact, if you went here, the people who were here, when you're walking around, it's kind of boring. Because there were no stages set up. There was no organization. It's messy at the beginning. So when I looked at this map, I said, oh my God, I understand the role of journalists today. Our role is to give these communities the information they need to form communities of action. That's cool. That was a visualization of what we do. This is January 2015. The Pope lands in Manila, the first hour. Pope Francis lands in Manila. So you can see the difference between the last map. So this is a product that we built. Imagine journalists building a product. It's our digital analytics for communities on Twitter. We want to chart our own communities. If you look here, you can see when you zoom in, the sizes of the circles are based on something called eigenvector centrality. It's not just how many people you know, how many followers you have. It's who you know. Does that sound like real life? Who you know matters, right? So here, the larger the circle, the more influential they are. It's like Google PageRank. And if you look at that, I look at this because there is the Pope up on top at Pontifex. And then down here is my network, which is more than 100 times the size of Rappler. And there's little Rappler. We have less than 100 people. This is guerrilla warfare. This is where I'll give you a little cautionary tale of Eastman Kodak, right? Kodak was a $31 billion company. It went bankrupt at about the same time that a little-known company called Instagram with 13 people was bought by Facebook for about $1 billion. Valuation, it's an insane time of creative destruction. This is something we did with P&G, and thank you, P&G. This was a great experiment that we did, and I want to show you, I hope you see that exponential curve, right? This is #WhipIt, gender equality. People care about these things. They are inspired to join, and they are inspired to create. And if you look here, let's look here. This is just the online mentions of this from November to December. But take a look at how something that begins with a small group can hit exponential growth. How? This is a forum that we did in the physical world. We live blogged, live tweeted. And look at the ripple effect. Pink is the Philippines, right? Look at the ripple effect. Blue is the United States. This big ripple, I think you guys know this one. That's the US. And that thing rippled out of the Philippines to the United States because Sheryl Sandberg posted it on her Facebook page. The ripple is incredible. It actually unites the world. And that's something we can harness if we can inspire people. That's why inspiration is so critical. I'm going to leave you with just this one thing. You would think that a small group of less than 100 people really shouldn't care less about social good. In this world, social good is what drives us and allows us to actually be able to make the revenues that allow us to keep going. So we decided very early on, as soon as we scaled in 2013, to begin something called Project Agos. It's disaster risk reduction. Essentially, what it does, it leverages the access journalists have to officials. And we take top-down government workflows and combine it with bottom-up civic engagement. And you can see it all in a transparent layer that anyone can look at. So for government, the risk is that people can see if you're not reacting fast enough. And for people, private sector or NGOs, you can actually see exactly where people need help. So this is climate change adaptation in a country that gets an average of 20 typhoons every year. We launched it 1 month before Typhoon Haiyan hit in November of 2013. In October, when I was talking about this in the Philippines, people were telling me, what are you doing? You're a journalist. You're an investigative journalist. You're a war zone correspondent. Why are you doing this? This is something that is within our reach and something all of us can do. Every person has 3 ways that they can report either information or calls for help. So you no longer have to pick up the phone and ask for help. You don't have to actually know anyone. You can actually just hashtag RescuePH, and it'll be automatically taken. A machine learning algorithm will plot it on the map, and it will be posted, and you can actually see who can respond to you immediately. So within the first year or so, you take a look, some of the things that we've had. Rescue alert, many stranded in the basement parking lot of Robinson's. And you can see the update, the Marikina, DRRM, Marikina Disaster Risk Reduction Management Council is sending help. So they have a direct link to them. In this one, the one at the bottom here, may babaeng nagle-labor sa ibabaw ng bubong. There's a woman who's going into labor on the roof of a house. And you can see here, Voltaire writes, Ressa Delgado is now in labor at Justado Macapagal Elementary School, rescued by the Philippine Red Cross. So you can see it, it's transparent. And on the maps, you can actually see the flight of the storm, you can see where the flooding is going to happen, you can see where there are instances of landfall. I'm gonna leave you with just this one. It's a minute video. It was the first time it's scaled. And you can see what the power of the crowd can do. It can do things government top-down cannot. That's the challenge for the Singapore government. After it's been so successful, it's got to learn to let go of control and trust the people, right? So I leave you with this. This was Typhoon Glenda. Audio video. Typhoon Glenda, known internationally as Ramasun, intensifies as it moves closer to the Bicol Samar area Tuesday. These were all the crowd. The crowd is the one putting this, posting it. The purple layers, that's where landslides can happen. And you can see, they're in their community, so who better than the people in their communities to post what they see? Now this is right after, and you can see the government agencies themselves are posting to let people know exactly what they're doing. This is the last part of it, after the storm is moving out. So we go back. The power of an individual to actually have the courage to take a risk and then go out and collectively create a community of action. That's the task in front of all of us today. Thank you.